Hey there, this is Felix from Goldammer Vintage Watches. Today's video is all about watch hands. Even though they are small, they can make or break the overall aesthetic of a timepiece. In this video, we will introduce you to 12 of the most used hands of the 19th century, even if there are of course a few more, explain you which design should fulfill which purpose, the history behind, and which shape was the most popular of the respective decade. Today's video is based on an article written by Markus Siems, who has been writing exciting articles for our website since this year. Markus has a remarkable talent to combine the world of data analysis with our passion for classic vintage watches. He set the hands on almost 4,000 watch dials publicly listed on Chrono24, with examples from 1940 until the end of the last century. We will link you his full article in the video description, so you are able to read all the details on today's and other topics. Watches use hands on a dial to show us the hours and minutes, and over the decades watchmakers have displayed great creativity in the way they shape their hands. These come in a huge variety of styles and are an integral part of watch design. Markus designed for each hand shape two graphics. On the left you will find a scale from 1940 to 2000 with the corresponding annual market shares, and on the right the most commonly used types of watches, also with the corresponding market shares. Let's start our today's journey with a famous handset called sword hands. As the name already explains, these hands are shaped like a sword. It features a narrow base getting wider to the top, ending into a pointy tip. Some are thick like a broadsword, while some are thin as a rapier. Sword hands has been used on a variety of different watches throughout the time. In the 1940s it was a very common view on many military watches, by far its most famous application. But throughout the time we see several increases in popularity in the 1950s, 1970s and from the mid-80s on. Interestingly, each time period has been using this design for different purposes. Apart from the military, you can find them on divers as well on dressier watches. The next handset are the Sewerage Hands, and they are also exactly what the name suggests. These hands start out as baton style, but with a needle-like tip. People sometimes call them military points, as they often were used in trench watches. Back then, telling the time as accurately as possible could mean life or death, and that's why the fine points on these hands were useful in war. And its classic design leaves space for luminous material as well. The syringe itself has never been extremely popular to the mass market, as you can see it on this graphic. They never eclipsed 6% market share. Nevertheless, it was eminent for mid-century military watches and particularly military chronographs. Cathedral hands are inspired by the stained glass windows you can find in European churches. The white torso holds a semi-oval structure of 3 or more facets. The design is optimized to hold as much luminous material as possible. Typically, the hour hand shows a cathedral-like setup and the minute hand is more slender, like a syringe hand. As you can imagine, the large amount of luminous material makes this design to the perfect military hand. Especially in the war and post-war years, it is a classic design, but the maximum annual market share is below 4%. However, it got almost completely extinct after 1950 and is only since the 1990s gaining a little traction again. Leaf, or in French, feuille, hands are the perfect embodiment of the Art Nouveau idea. It's a playful, organic and naturalistic design, which shape is best described as a fur needle. It's curvy and broadest, approximately 2/5 up from the base. This mimics the organic shape of a leaf, and it is one of the most popular watch hands that you can get your hands on. The leaf can most likely be described as the first real fashion trend hand in the list. It's a hand of the late 1940s and the early 1950s. It's a style that was very popular with many people in the post-war years, with a market share of over 20%. Another simple and versatile handset is the Alpha hand. The Alpha hand is often confused with a sword hand. To differentiate the two, a rule of thumb is that the Alpha is narrower at the end than the sword. These hands usually have a wide base and a pointy end. Most of these hands can also hold lume. As you can see, the Alpha is quite famous in the 1950s and early 1960s with a maximum market share of 17%. On the right graphic you can see that it is a common design for almost all watches of the time, slightly favoring dress and sporty pieces. Further, it is a style that at the time has particularly been common for Rolex pieces. If you're wearing a dress watch, there's a big chance that it bears Dofine hands. In fact, it is one of the most traditional and popular types of watch hands in the market from then till now. The Dofine hand is in every possible way the big brother of the Alpha hand style, and it's the answer to the leaf hand in the 1950s. These hands feature a classic tapered triangular shape and is typically faceted to perfectly capture the incoming light, highlighting its clean elegance. The Dofine is a trend design of the 1950s. It maxes at almost 50% market share in the mid-50s and is the hand of its time. With its subtle elegance, it's the perfect style for the time and can be seen in almost every collection of the 1950s. Arrow hands feature an arrow-shaped pointer. Again, the name gives away the shape of this design. It is remarkably useful to apply large amounts of luminous material. Historically, it has been common that only the hour hand was shaped like an arrow with a Dauphine-like minute hand. Modern examples, though, can feature both minute and hour arrow hands. The arrow is now definitely more popular than it has been in the last century. The annual market share never exceeded 4%. However, as you can see on the right graphic, it seems to have been a popular choice for early dive watch examples in particular. Baton or pointer hands are the most simplistic hands you can think of. They are literally a slim line, and if they are broad enough, they might feature a small tip. The Baton is an extremely common dress watch hand with more than 25% of all dress watches featuring this style. Its minimalistic design has been valued all throughout history, potentially the only hand without a very clear peak in popularity. Index or pencil hands are another simplistic and very common design choice. The index is slightly thicker than the baton, such that it contains luminous material. It shows a short tip, and the index, as opposed to the pencil, has further a slightly slimmer base than body. The index is one of the most common styles of the 1960s and 70s with a maximum annual market share of 35%, but it stays a widespread choice until today. It has been especially valued for chronograph pieces, but can be found on all different watch types. The stripe is a variation of the index hand. It's simplified down to a sole rectangular shaped body without tip or base. During its beginnings, the stripe has mainly been a very broad hand style that more and more got slimmed down to what you can, for example, see on most modern day Rolex pieces. The stripe hand is a modern hand style with above 30% annual market share since the mid-1960s. It's a manifestation of the modern sport and dress casual watch type and has been the to-go design for more than 50 years now. The Brigand hand is named after one of the central figures in early watchmaking and its inventor, Abraham Louis Brigand. It's shaped like a baton pointer hand, very slim body, but with a hollow circle near the tip. It's almost funny how the Brigand hand shows up as one of the most recent styles. Originally one of the earliest styles dating back to the 18th century, it still impressed many watch enthusiasts with its archaic vibe. As you can clearly see, the Brigand hand have not been very common all throughout the 20th century, but have sparked a new enthusiasm only within the last 30 years. It brings out something truly anachronistic in watches, and as ancient as this design seems, it has come to be a true comeback story. In the shape quite similar to the Cathedral hand, the Mercedes tries to maximize the potential area for luminous materials. The hour hand has a barrel-shaped base and a large circular area close to the top. This hoop is further subdivided into 3 segments, giving it the look of the Mercedes logo and the name as well. The minute hand is typically an index. Most people recognize this design as featured on steel sport models from Rolex. However, it's not only a Rolex design and can be found on many more recent watches, and particularly on dive watch models with an almost 60% total market share. As this design is closely linked to the divers of this world, it is increasing its annual market into the 1980s. Now we're getting closer to the end of this video. Here you can see the last graphic for today, and you can see the relative market share for all 12 analyzed handsets. And here it's really easy to recognize that every time period had its distinct hand designs. Different styles of watch hands can completely change the look and feel of a dial, and it's important to know what your options are. So we hope this guide will help you a little bit out. So have a great day and hope to see you in our next video.